Hey everybody, this is Mika and you're watching Black Girl with Glasses on YouTube. This week I want to talk about sex abuse within the black community, how it affects survivors, and what survivors can do to heal. This is a topic I wanted to speak on for the longest because one, I feel survivors need to have support within the black community. And one way to get it is to actually talk about this issue. And I myself am a survivor of child sex abuse, and I'm going through the healing process right now as a 35-year-old adult. Um, but what inspired me to have this conversation was actually Nate Parker. Parker is the writer, director, and actor of the critically acclaimed film Birth of a Nation. Recently, he ran into some controversy when it was revealed that he raped a 19-year-old girl, or a woman rather, a college freshman in 1999. And since then, there were think pieces, videos, and Facebook arguments regarding Parker and his lack of accountability, his sincerity or maybe lack thereof, and many other points. Um, Writer Ashleigh Shackelford wrote a brilliant piece about how Parker needs to be held accountable by fellow black folks. And I'll put that in the comments when I'm done here. But on the flip side of that, there weren't a lot of articles or anything about Parker's victim. And that's what I've noticed. In fact, not only does she remain nameless, but she unfortunately took her own life in 2012 at the age of 30 because of what Parker did to her back in the day. So when his interview with Ebony Magazine came out, and it started with black folks giving him standing ovations at his movie premieres and talking about how much they loved him, um, that was more than a little heated about that. So this is why I wanted to focus more on victims in this video, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not surprised either by the accolades that this man is getting, because black male perpetrators are often protected and defended by other black folks, especially if they're a family member. According to the stats, more than 90% of child sex abuse crimes are committed by someone the victim knows and trusts, be it a family member, a family friend, a beacon of the community, um, who has access to the child. And so when victims disclose the abuse, they're more likely to be silenced or worse, blamed for it. As far as the blame, this tends to happen to a lot of young black girls within the community. Most of these victims are literally told that the abuse is their fault, that they literally did or said something to set off whatever trigger the perpetrator has to make them commit this crime or to act inappropriately. And though it's not true, this is not true. Um, there are a lot of young girls who believe otherwise, and they grow up to be grown women with self-esteem issues, which is why many of us don't say anything. We don't report our abuse. I remember when I was 16 years old, my mother found out about my molestation. I was molested by my aunt from the ages of 5 to 16, and she found that out about that when reading my journal. She then told my father, who in turn interrogated me, asking me questions that I myself had no answer to. And even after all that, I was still um, I was still shaken up, and I was still feeling shame, um, and there was nothing done about it. The abuse was pretty much swept under the rug, and to this day, there isn't a lot of talk about it unless I start that conversation. Um, so this whole thing of the family pretending as if nothing has happened, that was my experience as a black girl, a 16-year-old awkward, nerdy black girl. Now, if I were a male victim, it would have been worse. I can only imagine what it would have been like. for a male victim, because most victims are abused by someone of the same gender. So sexually abused boys tend to question their masculinity and sexuality when it happens to them. If they're not already questioning their sexual orientation, um, or if they are, rather, the abuse will only cause more confusion. And if they're raised in a Christian household, or where they are often inundated with the message that homosexuality is a sin, loving someone of the same gender is a sin, even engaging in that infalt is a sin, most males are not going to disclose because they don't want to risk losing much needed resources such as housing and family support. But I say all that to highlight how many Black families respond to sexual abuse. Is often swept under the rug. When folks in the family find out, it's often swept under the rug, or the victim is too afraid to say anything because of the power and the control the perpetrator has over them. There are other instances where the victim faces retaliation after disclosing the abuse. That's what happened with Parker's victim. Um, that's what happened to her when she reported the abuse to the college administration. Now, keep in mind that she is white. She is not part of the Black community at all. But Parker and his accomplice, and actually his co-writer for Birth of a Nation, Gene Selsden, harassed their victim for months, and the college did very little to protect her. Meanwhile, she begins to develop mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms, and attempted suicide in her dorm. She eventually had to quit school, and she never recovered from her rape. And like I said before, the victim was white. Now, this may seem far-fetched, so please stay with me, but I suspect that the victim's race was one of the reasons why black women, older Black women, caped for Parker for as much as they did. In fact, there is usually older Black women who protect abusive Black men, and it's because of this idea that the Black family structure is in dire straits and need to be maintained. And if Black men are in prison or are incarcerated for whatever reason, the dynamics will be affected, and so will the family. There are a lot of Black men locked up already, so the mentality of a lot of Black women is like, why would we put our men, or give our men to this white supremacist system? And this brings up another point. White supremacy plays a huge part in abusive Black men being protected. Think about it for a second. The mortality of Black men the mortality, of Black men is growing shorter through or due to various forms of oppression. Not to mention that Eurocentric society, this society is always telling us Black folks that we don't matter. So when one of us succeeds, it's deemed a victory against racism and the negative stereotypes involving our intelligence and work ethic. The problem with this, though, is, when these same successful Black folks turn out to be problematic, we're willing to ignore it regardless of the crime they committed. Like, especially if the star is a man. Like, remember when Anita Hill accused Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment back in the 80s or early 90s? So many Black women defended Thomas, saying that Hill was bringing him down and tampering with his success and his achievements. He is working for the government. How dare she tear this man down? And they pretty much cape for this man the same way they would their own son. So that's just one example of how this no-tip mentality regarding the Black family structure keeps victims quiet, which is detrimental to us victims because the shame and guilt causes us to develop unhealthy coping mechanisms. So we're more likely to become addicts, have relationship issues, have issues with intimacy, become abusers ourselves, develop mental and emotional illnesses, among other issues. So to avoid or overcome those obstacles, we need to support ourselves and we need to help ourselves. Um, and so here are some ways survivors can begin the healing process. So number one, allow yourself to grieve. There is nothing worse than having folks tell you to get over it. You don't get over the abuse. It alters your perception of reality. It alters your relationships or your perception of relationships, your perception of yourself, your perception of society. It fucks you up mentally and emotionally, especially if you're just now going through the healing process. So you have to give yourself time to grieve because you lost your innocence to someone else who had their own agenda, and they were only you lost it to someone who was going through their own issues and they did it for their own sexual gratification. It had nothing to do with you. So you lost your innocence due to someone else's fuckery. Wow, that was bad. But you know how I know what I mean, right? So if you're going through the healing process, allow yourself to breathe. Okay. So another thing you can do is find a healthy support system. Be around folks who are willing to open up their ears and give you their undivided attention. You, as a survivor, y'all look. You deserve a squad who's going to ride or die for you, especially if you're hurting. Having a squad, a healthy squad, is very important. Like me, I have a squad who is there to tell me that there is nothing wrong with me, that I'm awesome, that what happened to me, what my aunt did to me was not my fault. They remind me of my strength, my courage, and my perseverance. They tell me that I deserve the best in life, and I need to hear that at times. I need a shoulder to cry on at times, and I will, because I know for a fact that I will do the same for them. And that's what a healthy support system is about: reciprocity, um, and interdependence. So if you're going to disclose for the first time your abuse, make sure that the person or a group of people you're telling, um, they will keep that information confidential, and they can be trusted. Otherwise, you're going to be putting yourself in harm's way, especially if that person or group of people are known for breaching confidentiality. Which brings me to number three: forgive your way and on your own time. Okay, I need to stress this because there is like this Christian-based assumption that in order for you to be happy, you have to forgive your abuser, and until you do, you're going to be fucking miserable. No, that's not the case at all. Yes, forgiveness is important and it's a step towards a healing process. It really is. However, it's okay to do it at your own time, or I'm sorry, on your own time and at your own pace. Forgiveness does not make or break you as a human being. It does not make you horrible because you're not having this lifetime channel type revelation involving you forgiving your abuser and you are hugging and skipping down the street and singing songs. No, that's just not the case at all. In fact, that's completely unrealistic. So forgiveness is not about the abuser or forgiving the abuser. It's basically about you and centering you in that whole process, to help you heal. Um, you are doing it um, to be at peace with you and to be at peace with what happened. And if you don't want to have the abuser in your life, if you're not trying to reconcile or forgive the person but forgive their actions, you can do that too. But what's most important is that you forgive your way. You come up with your own solution and come up with your own way to forgive. Um, because what's important is that you are at peace with what is going on. You are at peace um, with what happened. You don't have to like this. You there's not a race. It's not a race, this forgiveness race. You do it at your own pace, and you do it for yourself. You don't do it for approval, and you don't do it for somebody else. That needs to be stressed. And so, with that being said, please, 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 this brings me to number 4. Never use your trauma as an excuse for anything. It's okay to hurt and be angry, to be pissed, to be depressed. It's okay to go through whatever rainbow and array of emotion that you want to go through, but don't use any of that, as an excuse to hurt yourself or others. That's not what you're here for. You have every right to have an awesome quality of life, the very best of everything, but that's not possible if you're out here being an abuser and an emotional manipulator or abusing yourself. So no growth comes from that. And you're here to do better. You're going through this healing process to do better because you deserve happiness and peace. But it's not fair to do it at the expense of others. So definitely do everything you can to check yourself. That's why a support system, a healthy support system, is so important, because you're going to need people during this healing process to check you when they know that you're doing something that is very unhealthy for yourself, or to yourself and other people. And this is very important. Number 5 is very important as well. Always remember that you are not your trauma. I had to remember this today. I ran into an ex-lover the day before at a friend's party, and something went down that triggered me. This person actually used me for sex, even though he knew how I felt about him, even though he knew about my sexual trauma. And so he did, or actually said, something that threw me completely off, and I was not having a good day today. So when I saw my employment counselor, I'm trying to find part-time work, I broke down crying in his office because I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I consider myself damaged goods, which is common among those who have been sexually abused or abused in general. But my counselor reminded me by saying something in regards to himself, because he himself is an abuse victim, and he, excuse me, and he said that his own abuse history is not who he is. And I have to repeat that to those who are listening, and I have to actually repeat that to myself. You are not your abuse history. You are not damaged. You are not unlovable, undesirable, and undateable. But you are a crystal gem with the powerful abilities that involve inner strength and perseverance and bravery. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. So please remember that, and I will remember that with you. So with that being said, we're definitely out of time. But I really wanted to have this conversation because it needs to happen. We survivors in the Black community, we can't avoid this topic anymore. We can't afford to, because this no snitch policy regarding sex abuse is literally killing survivors and victims. And it needs to end with a quickness. So that's my housemate who doing whatever in his room. But tune in next week, and I'll have another topic for you. I want to actually talk about next week. I definitely want to talk about neurodivergence and learning disabilities, and how it affects Black folks who are undiagnosed. And also I want to have that conversation because I'm going through that right now. But until then, you can also check out Black Girl with Glasses on WordPress, Twitter, and Facebook. So until next time, love, peace, and fake chicken grease. See ya.